Well, hi there, and welcome to Immedia's first webinar. We hope that this will be the first of a series of learnings from our team and a place to showcase our digital products and services that will help you and your business in the here and now. Immedia, in case you don't know, we're a tech company based right here in Durban, South Africa. We have three divisions of the company. We have Geek Managed Services. That's a team to help you with any software or hardware tech issues. Connectivity, managed services, cloud services, and tech support. Then it's Immedia itself, which is a group of digital transition consultants to help develop native apps, Azure cloud architecture, and web development. And then there's Fabric, which you'll find out a little bit more about in today's webinar. It's a white label product developed specifically for radio, and it's very many challenges. But then we kind of found out that those weren't unique to radio. And the product can be used in other industries with equal success. And there's more focus on that, as I say, the radio product later in the session, which I'll be hosting. On the webinar today is myself, Jonathan Lumley, Head of Clients, Channels, and Markets here at Immedia. So in terms of understanding the product and getting prices, you can ask me. In the middle of your screen is Tyler Bradley Cox, our Insights product owner. She has all the stats and analytics behind the platform. And on the right, the deliciously handsome CEO and founder of Immedia, Anice Hassim, and he'll be speaking today on the webinar about how you should think about radio today. And those ideas and learnings can be translated to your own business or radio station. On the right-hand side of your screen, you'll see that there is a comment section. Please use that to chat, send us comments, or obviously send us any questions that you might have during the webinar, and we'll try and get to those a little bit later in the webinar itself, or alternatively, we might be getting back to you separately. We have a broad spectrum of attendees today, so welcome. It's nice to see you all here, and thank you very much for joining and registering. We really do hope that you have many more of these on a regular session, and a regular basis, should I say, and you can block that off in your calendar, and you can miss those all-important meetings with your boss that you don't really want to attend on another session. We'd really like you to be part of that, and we appreciate your time today. So thank you very much for joining us. First up is our founder and CEO, Anice Hassim.
Welcome to Immedia. I've been working in radio all my life, and Immedia for the last 25 years has been pretty much exploring the intersection of radio and digital with some very interesting successes and innovations, and we hope to be able to, in the course of this future journey of webinars and information sharing, and certainly with our Fabric product, be able to share some of the insights, the learnings, and the ideations that we've been able to play around with. So welcome to Everything Old is New Again. How should we be thinking about radio today? And I'm going to be looking at it through the example of just one element, which is podcasting. But I think as radio professionals, we're going to be able to see the broad applicability. And of course, we are in very interesting times at the moment. So, you know, part of the challenge that media has been having is how to transition to new means of distribution and feedback. But the human element tends to remain the same. The content that engages, content that informs, content that entertains, the ability for audiences to relate to that content and engage with it is universal. It doesn't change, and it has not changed. The radio in particular has held on for generations, but it has waned as a medium in terms of importance, particularly in the last 40 or 50 years, as more full spectrum media have come up and more digital media in the last phase has started to take over. And it's interesting that radio sort of finds its feet again when there's a natural disaster that collapses digital infrastructure. You know, the power and the signal disappears and you've got to fall back to good old FM. Or when the trust quotient of radio becomes a differentiator during a human emergency. And the pandemic that we're living through at the moment, I think, is an example of the latter, When we're living through a human emergency, we want to connect with trust, intimacy, be intimate with information vendors that we believe are rooted in our context and in our reality and in our community, so that we are able to be informed in a way that's relevant and appropriate to our circumstances. Now, radio struggled to go digital, mainly because, as an analog medium, it hasn't changed. The entire vertical is geared to getting a signal out on air, and very little about capturing that signal for rebroadcast or amplification. And certainly the feedback loop from the audience to the station has remained extremely thin. It's gone from send a postcard to, phone into the 3 lines that are in the studio to maybe now, shout on our Twitter page or Facebook page and we might hear you. So when we look at all of this change around us, it's been constant. Change happens all the time. There are moments of inflection when it happens faster because something happened. And I think the global pandemic is a catalyst for urgent change. But at the same time, it's giving us a needed crystallization of all of the change that has been coming already. So looking forward, I think, we've got to look at this pattern and understand that in large part, digital is bringing radio, in my view, back to life. If radio is able to rapidly go digital, okay, because the markets of opportunity of digital are more local, they're more interest-based, they're the kind of markets that radio strength is incredibly powerful at, okay? So as we've been going more and more digital, more and more real time, the markets of opportunity and engagement becomes increasingly personal. It's about me, in my context, in the community I belong to. And these are very important values in radio. And in digital, the world's being dominated by platforms. And these platforms bring structure and coherence to these markets. And I think one of the things that radio has a difficulty doing is seeing itself as a modern digital platform that can curate for its market. YouTube is global, you are local. Facebook is social, but radio is community. So the superpower, your original superpower, that companion element of radio, the trust quotient that you have, your audience, which is less a series of disconnected receivers of information, but very, very powerfully want to be a part of your community. You have trust, you are a tastemaker and a taste tester, and you are able to inform, notify, engage in both directions with digital. So digital actually amplifies radio's original superpower from the human spectrum. And a large part of the digital journey has been trying to connect with people in a better way. So for a while, there was this whole, we'll just live in the algorithm and we don't need tastemakers anymore or human presenters. And if you think about it, Apple Music, Spotify are all launching or have launched radio shows with real human beings on the other end of it. So, where's the algorithm now? And in this last sort of pandemic emergency that we were going through, I was quite amused in April to come across this in my tweet stream. If only there was a live podcast that could update us on the pandemic in real time. And clearly, this was from a younger person in the world, because the answer to that is yes, there are live podcasts. It's called radio. And I think that's an important thing for us to understand as professionals. The audience growing up today doesn't have a need or perceive a need to turn to radio. And we are building and serving content to an audience that effectively is increasingly dying. Well, not increasingly dying, but you know what I mean. They'll die sometime. That's a terrible joke to make in the pandemic situation. I used to work for a newspaper who didn't curate their younger listenership and build new readership and build new readers. And as a result, every year their sales diminished because their readership was dying on them and they weren't doing enough to attract new readers. And that comes down to content, comes down to services that you can provide and the relevance that you provide. Now, if we look at radio, just not even radio, print, everybody's cry of pain is digital's eating our lunch and we can't compete. And share of advertising budget is being lost to digital. And certainly in South Africa, a fair chunk of the advertising budget goes to the likes of the Googles and the Facebooks, and increasingly going to digital. And as a result, our inventories are being devalued. And we don't see digital as a place that we can play and compete on, because we don't see how we can do that when we're going up against a Facebook or a YouTube, or a Spotify. So when we look at something like podcasting, we see it as a distraction. And yet last week, Spotify signed Joe Rogan, who's a media personality and podcaster and a few other things besides. And that one deal alone added $3 billion to their valuation. And in fact, they're paying Joe Rogan $100 million. A music band would have to deliver 23 billion streams to earn that equivalent. And we are struggling to find opportunity and revenue in radio. So I think we really got to ask ourselves a question is, what is happening there? Because the value of that is the content, right? It's the distribution. And there's nothing preventing us in our current markets from being able to do it at all. But when we look at it, it's a habit, it's a mindset. If we broadcast or if we podcast at all, it's generally a rebroadcast of what went out on air. It's not original programming at all. In fact, I'm sure there's some of us that are doing it and doing it well. We'll hear from Tyler a bit more about this, but I think, as a matter of interest, if any of you are doing original broadcast of content, please do let us know. And if you do use podcasts at all, it's generally your station staff that are producing it, and you're not inviting in a diversity of local talent or opportunity or curating or editing it. And there's more than one reason for that. It's not just the content issue. It's the workflows, it's the production systems, it's the turnaround. It can take many minutes, many hours to get a podcast off the systems and onto the digital platforms. And generally, it's a mess because you don't have a digital infrastructure. With the Fabric platform, we've basically created a digital infrastructure that any radio station can use that's native to their workflows and habits. It amplifies the values of radio. It taps into the workflows that you already know, and it taps into the real-time sensibility that radio needs to have. And most importantly, it builds your audience as a true community. So you become real-time, you become both directional, conversational in both directions. You can talk to your audience can talk to you. So you're leveraging the socialized behavior that your audience already knows how to use. And you're doing that entirely on your own platform. So where radio has not seen itself as a platform that can compete with the global platforms, our premise is that by adopting infrastructure like Fabric, you actually can compete. And because you are competing in your market with your relevance and your sense of community taste and editorship, you're going to be able to outpunch those global platforms for sure, because people want to connect to where they are and where their interests are. So the massive opportunity for radio at the local scale is far bigger than we think any other media type. Print is being decimated. Local television in markets in South Africa hasn't really taken off. But if you think about radio with a digital infrastructure, it's everything. It's a full spectrum broadcast. It's local radio, it's local television, it's your local social network, it's your local marketplace. You can blend content, you can blend services, and you can blend choreography into that. And it's really hard to compete with global networks because you have the trust. And that's an important differentiator. So you don't see yourself as a platform because, you know, the infrastructure and the ease of use has not quite been there, because you're still kind of pre-digital. But with a platform like Fabric and with tools like Fabric, and we've seen some incredible results and opportunities that our current clients are creating, building on those elements of trust, community, real-time engagement, and doing it all in a private digital environment where they are able to set the value system, the trust quotient, and the quality of the content directly themselves. So there's no reason for you to not go digital. With tools like Fabric, you can. And what can't you do now with something like that? So that's just a quick thought around, you know, just a simple thing like podcasting. Is there not a Joe Rogan in your marketplace? You know, at the moment, it's a global moving down to local to hyper local sort of flow. But radio can reverse that. You can break the next Joe Rogan from your community to your broader region to the world. And then maybe $1 billion opportunity exists at the other end of that, because the scale and speed of the opportunity works in both directions. I think this is what we really have to sort of deeply understand. As quickly as a global person can go viral into markets locally around the world, a local talent can go global. And how do we sort of better and deepen our understanding of what it's going to take to do that? So that's just the talk from me. I'm going to hand over to Tyler, who's going to present some deeper insights and learnings on how radio can thrive in this new environment. So thank you very much for listening, and welcome, Tyler.
Thank you, Anice, for that. So today I will be providing some patterns and insights into our learnings from 2020 in the digital radio space. My name is Thaila Botes. I know it says Tyler Cox, but I recently got married. So I'm a qualified economist and I work as a PO at immedia. For those of you that don't know what a PO is, I kind of head up the data and the insights into our back end. So as I said, today I'm going to be providing some patterns and insights into the learnings from 2020 in the digital radio space. But in order to truly understand how we've got to where we are today, we need to understand the story leading up to it and how radio got to this point of insights. So I'm going to look at the radio of the past and I'm going to play a sound clip. There's going to be a poll that's going to come up in your chat. You should see it. And I want you to answer the poll, just do you know where the sound clip is from? I'm just going to switch over because the audio didn't transfer onto the webinar. So just give me a second here. Okay. And so if you know where that sound clip is from, just tap yes. Okay, most of you said you don't know where the sound clip is from. That sound clip is from 1906. It was the first sound clip that was ever broadcast on media. Sorry, just hold on, my slides have gone all funny. Yeah. It was the first piece ever played on radio, ever. And it was played on Christmas Eve of 1906. And it tickled the ears of astonished cruise ship people of the United Fruit Company out in the Atlantic Ocean and the Caribbean Sea. 18 years later, radio entered South Africa broadcasting with the first radio station ever starting in Johannesburg with JP calling. Cape Town was the second to follow the trend, and then third was Durban. In 1930, Galvin Manufacturing introduced the first car radio as Motorola. It was one of the first commercially successful radio cars and the first major product of the company that later became Motorola Incorporated. What this meant is commuting drivers now could listen to the news and their favorite hosts or even music while they were commuting to work. This was a massive step for radio, as people were able to be accessed out of their homes. Now, in 1993, the world's first ever internet radio was launched by Cole Malmud, way back. His station was dubbed the Internet Talk Radio, and it featured interviews of public figures and fields of science and technology, obviously. Very soon after, a number of live concerts were also broadcast on the internet, and followed by the launch of the first radio station to play music on the web. The Internet Radio Control Panel software solutions played a very big part as well in evolving radio landscape, as we would eventually rise streaming music services such as Spotify, Pandora, Apple Music, and even Google Music. New media platforms such as these were based on somewhat radical different paradigms of control and the choice of listener essentially being an on-demand service. So music became on-demand on the radio. I mean, not on the radio, but on the internet. And then in 1996, a very limited bunch of people would have been able to access the internet on their radio. On their mobile devices. The first mobile phone with internet connectivity was the Nokia 9000 communicator. It was launched in Finland back in 1996, but in truth, it was very expensive to buy data back then. So if you were in Finland during the 1990s, you would have been able to essentially access the internet radio from your phone. There was a long period of time when the disruption and consumption of mediums like radio, TV, and movies were well established and subject to relatively little change. However, the period we're in now is in perpetual change with the help of the internet, leading us to consider, where do we go to next? Now, if we look at the trends of 2020, approximately 75% of our app listeners are willing to opt in and share information with their favorite radio stations. But what does this information tell us? We have a nostalgic listenership. As we've traveled through the brief history now of what radio looked like, it's apparent that accessing your favorite radio station from anywhere in the world is only a recent development and made possible by internet radio. With this availability to access radio from any location, it seems to have created a nostalgic listening audience, where we are seeing beloved radio stations being listened to from their FM signals by users who once dwelled within them. A KZN radio station seems to have a large Johannesburg listening, as the youth have moved to the CBD to pursue their careers, but with relatively new unlimited geographical restrictions of audio, entering its new concept in radio onset by the even more recent developments in social media, which leads us to the second point, which is two-way engagement. Now, this is very new for radio because your audience speaks back. The modern digital world is demanding about real-time instant feedback. No longer is radio only a one-way stream of communication. The audience is demanding their voice to be heard, and they are ready to engage and interact in an instant. With the Fabric platform, I am always surprised at how instantly we see hundreds of responses coming through when we are doing an online-only campaign. In fact, a few weeks ago, one of our biggest radio stations ran a campaign, and we had so many responses, our resources need to be re-provisioned with new cloud resources. It illustrates the obvious. Your audience wants to engage with given the opportunity. They just need something to engage with. Which brings me to my third point, which is creative content. Content on radio is no longer going to stay the same. There have been other industries that, due to confidence in the stability of their markets, became complacent, and they've now been consumed by digital. So here's another question. It will come out on the poll. How many of you actually listen to podcasts? I'm going to give you a second to answer. Wow, the numbers are really changing quite quickly. Cool. So if you've answered yes, believe it or not, you're actually among minority. In the words of a very successful radio producer, nobody listens to podcasts. People listen to the radio and they go on the internet, but not many people listen on the radio listen to the radio on the internet. Our insights actually suggest that most listen to podcasts are stations or talk shows that already have a large following of audience, basically just back and forth conversation or actually comedy. So if no one is listening, then who would want to spend tons of money and time making a really good podcast? Well, as it turns out, with a little bit of reinvention and some quality, you can in fact get people to listen to podcasts. But it's not just podcasts. Radio in general is needing a reinvention of itself for the web. It's a thoughtful and in a thoughtful and experimental way. The most innovative voices coming from radio nowadays are the ones that aren't just following their audience. Because for the most part, their audience is not following them onto the internet. So they are giving their audience a reason to follow them. But how do you get people to listen? Well, let's take a look at a game changer that happened in podcasting in 2014. Another podcast called Serial. Has anybody heard of this? I'm going to put another poll out. And I'll give you a minute to respond. Okay, so Serial is a podcast that came out that introduced a real-life murder of a teenager and the trial of her ex-boyfriend. The producer decided to only air the first episode on radio. But other than that, every other episode was on the internet. Serial went viral. It was downloaded in the first few months almost 40 million times, and publicity went crazy for how popular it was. But how did the producer know that putting all that time and energy into something that would only be playing on the internet would pay off in such a grand way? She didn't. In fact, the quotation, "nobody listens to podcasts," was a quote from that exact same producer who created the series. But what made this podcast so different? Serial followed a similar pattern to a TV series. It was one single story told over several weeks. The audio series did not wait for a huge audience before creating the series. They decided to create an audience and give them something to follow. For many small startup radio stations, the concept of creating an audience is not new, but for many established and developed stations, they have an audience of loyal listeners and there's a tendency to follow the audience's wants and do what has been done for years. After all, why change something that has already worked? Well, on our apps, we've noticed something interesting with a client of ours who decided to take COVID-19 daily updates and curate them on a read-only channel. Not only did their downloads spike, but their daily engagement from their users doubled overnight. And all of a sudden, passive listeners became engaged followers, interacting within their Fabric ecosystem every single day. So how do you make your audio go viral in the digital age? Experiment and be creative. Borrow from things that have already worked and do what you do best, but put it out there and give people a reason to follow you. So what is the future of digital radio going to look like? It's honestly up to the curation and imagination of those who are intrigued enough to create it. And that's all from me. Jonathan is going to be taking over and he's going to talk you through how this is possible using Fabric. Thanks, Jonathan.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Tyler. Queen of polls there, which is really, really interesting. I'm very impressed with that. I do actually also have something to put up on the screen, and if you are interested from the content that I've got regarding Fabric, the product that we have created, developed, and I see, funnily enough, a number of our clients are attendees today, which is fantastic to see. Thank you very much, guys. And also some other people from my radio past, and certainly I think Anice's radio past, also on the list of attendees today. So thank you very much for joining us and wanting to know more. If you are interested in finding out more about Fabric, our product, then please just click on that offers tab there on the right-hand side of the screen, and we will give you more information, of course. I am going to do the scary thing and try and share my screen, which is always lots of fun when we do these things live. And we obviously hope that it's going to go through okay as we present basically any radio station anywhere in the world. This entire chaos that it is, highly complex, many moving parts, so many online tools being used, as you can see. And there's usually a lack of digital audience ownership due to fragmentation across social media, across the platforms there, fragmented audience engagement channels, costs of digital infrastructure and development, limited digital revenue and control. There's no consolidation towards intelligence around the digital audience as well, and inefficient operational workflows. And everyone is really trying to, really get ahead, get stuff on air as we are at the moment, and also try and make some money too. But there is a technology that brings us all this uncollaborative chaos together, and it's called Fabric. And your radio station can use it too if you're not already. Yes, at first glance, it's just another radio app, but it is fundamentally different to other radio apps available in the marketplace. Firstly, the community aspect of the app, which Anice alluded to earlier, it's your own ecosystem. Then it has its own feedback loop. And thirdly, there are ways to make revenue from the app, which should entice a number of the salespeople on this webinar. So because of the feedback loop and because of the messages and the conversational channels you can create within the app, it becomes your own community, so that rather than you building up a social media channel and making Facebook rich, you create your own channels of engagement within the app. It's really an amazing thing to build up that because it's an audience you can now touch for the station, for the presenters themselves, or the shows, or even the clients to communicate with the audience directly. It's never been done before, and all in real time. It also, as you can see on the screen now, allows for voice notes, and more especially allows you to add text to that voice note as well to send through to specific campaigns. Kind of a game changer. It becomes a proper loyal fan base of super users, and you can measure that engagement, and you can get the audience into various channels that interest them the most, and in certain instances get them to sign in, create a profile, and that is especially useful for advertisers and the radio station itself. This is your ecosystem, yours to engage with, yours to build and grow, and yours to monetize. It's immensely powerful, and you're going to hear me say that several times in this particular section, because it really is. It's an incredible product. Essentially, on the front end of the app, it allows, like most radio apps, and you're probably going to go, yes, well, of course it does. It live streams, of course, as do all radio apps, as I say. But then there's a podcast section. As you can see on the screen there, it's just the bottom, a little rewind tab. And to Anice's point, that's where you can curate all of your content, catch up, listen, and obviously it's the rewind for listeners to catch up on content from the station. But then you can also create message channels for users to message each other in. There are interest groups that you can create, or forums. There are chat or conversational channels, or broadcast or read-only channels to get the audience to engage on. And on the back end, your community manager, or managers, or producers have the overview of everything through an interface which also links all your social media and app messaging together. So one place to view all of your channels, your community combined. Then, of course, there's the revenue you can make. There's the advertising inventory for clients to promote their goods or services for their most loyal fans. And remember that it's your ecosystem as a radio station. You can build that up, grow it. The advertiser will then see how many people saw or clicked on their advert. The advertiser can partner and be part of the content, or create messaging channels for them to be a part of that community. Instant reaction features within this product for example, dial boards for the audience to call or ask for more information from an advertiser, and even a directory of services. Here's a couple of screenshots of what's available within the app, and you can get hold of us for more information. This is all app inventory to use and the radio station to make money from. And you can choose what you want to charge clients, because this isn't a social media. This is, once again, your ecosystem. And then you charge the advertiser as to how much access you want to that audience. This isn't another social media that you don't have control over with their ever-changing algorithm. This is the station's community, an epicenter for a radio station to understand its audience even more. And everything, the podcasts, the live streams, the messages are all stored safely and securely in the cloud, scaled and built on Microsoft Azure. Use it to grow and engage with your community in a private and secure system, and it's branded to you and your environment, not just your logo slapped on it. It's integral. And then your community manager has the view of a smashboard where everything is a single view, and you can integrate your social media and see all the messages that are coming through from listeners, and in-app messages and messages from listeners. You can profile your audience and a whole lot more. This product, Fabric, is provided as a software as a service solution with associated managed services from immedia, from technical, business, content, and community management. So what are the opportunities involved in using an app like this? Well, it allows your advertisers and partners to engage with you conversationally or with each other in a private and secure environment. You get rich analytics from this platform. On the back end, it's immensely powerful. Find out how many people are listening to live streams, how many are concurrently listening, how many app sessions are taking place, how many podcast downloads, where the listener is, what mobile device are they listening from, various other campaign reports, all available. And when you want to build up your audience and profile them, you get the registered users. You can distribute content and information at a central point or in real time and on demand in the form of messages, images, voice notes, newsletters, or web links. And you can consolidate your operational services, giving your team insights into your audience on which you can build and evolve your communication strategy as a radio station. It can help you achieve revenue through the platform, as I mentioned earlier, with sales inventory that you saw, with billboards, directory of services, and you can make money displaying those adverts to your community. Then, as you see on the screen right now, is EchoCast. EchoCast is an incredible tool. It's a real-time podcasting tool. It also manages your live streams on the radio station through your website and onto this app. It allows you a way to control your content as well, and allows for retrieval of audio through the cloud. So all of your audio is backed up. It's archived for you to call on at any time and find if you need it. And that audio backed up mitigates your risk on premises with cloud archive. And of course, there's an audit trail. As you can see, the various features on your screen right now, with live streaming, the web widgets on your website, podcasts on demand, and we host those podcasts for you for safe storage. Immedia has created the apps for a number of radio stations internationally and right here in South Africa. And as I mentioned, a number of those clients are on this particular webinar today, including YFM, Gagazi FM, which is the station, the biggest commercial radio station in South Africa, and Smile FM, and various other community radio stations, and a host of non-media apps for professional and residential communities. But both have the ability for you to own your own community like never before. And that community becomes more powerful to use when you own a product like this. Like I say, it's a powerful tool, and your station can own it and operate it like many of our very successful clients in understanding and engaging their audience. This is Fabric. And if you want to know more, book a demo, or to go even deeper into Fabric, then please use this link on the screen and learn more. It's fabric.cloud/radio. So that concludes it from my side. As I try and stop sharing the screen and move back from the camera a little bit today, I'm just going to go into seeing if there were any particular questions that need answering, and we can obviously throw it out to the team. I see If there were a few connection issues that we had that came through the webinar today, but rest assured that this will also be recorded, and we'll also send out a link to any of the attendees and anybody who registered. So if you would like to share that later on, or you can catch up with it in your own time, and of course listen to our lovely voices all over again, you're more than welcome to do that. So thank you very much for joining us. I don't think there are any specific questions that have come through. I see a couple of specific messages that have come through. Anice, you need to say anything? We just need to hear you on the mic, of course. I hear you.
I just wanted to add that this building up this digital community element of radio, I think, is something that the audience really needs to connect with and understand and be curious about, because the insights we see are incredibly powerful. So, for example, 80% of the audience who download your app will register with you and establish a relationship with you. That's a metric that's very hard for other mediums to compete with. An 80% opt-in rate to your community is pretty incredible. But we're seeing that in radio. I mean, our lowest opt-in rate, I think, is 50%. I mean, obviously, it depends on your audience, your connection with the audience, your offering. But even if you are just sort of doing the basics and barely struggling to get by as a radio station, that power of connection and identity and belonging and participation that the audience is hungry for, and we know that from radio, right, is so powerful in the digital space that they will establish that relationship with you, and they will look to you for service. They will look to you for recommendation, and they will look to you for direction on value. So radio becomes more than just content, it becomes services as well. And that's a complete game changer. So, when we're looking at our digital radio communities, they're conversational, they're real time. Audiences are participating in the value addition. So it's not just his master's voice, we broadcast, you receive. We are seeing that very powerfully in radio stations in the community space, where they've got a lot more informality and a lot more sort of opportunity to be conversational. And those of our clients have actually allowed the community in to converse with them. They're seeing incredible engagement. And it's not the same as the public social. So the toxicity of the behavior and the vandalism doesn't actually happen in the radio community, surprisingly. A number of our stations have now opened public soapboxes. The audience can come in and chat to each other in the real time on their platform.
Which is incredible.
And, exactly, Jonathan. Our hearts were in our mouth, right? Because
they were.
Regime be far behind, right? I think was the word I was my worry at the time. And one station's been doing it for 6 months now, and is actually building on it in the community space. And what we're realizing is, of course, why not? Because we're tapping into that human need. We're not going to Facebook because we want to make Mark Zuckerberg rich or participate in that toxicity. We want to connect with people. And if we can connect in our community or in our interest community, our geographic community or interest community, it's so much more powerful.
Yeah.
And we identify with that radio brand. So, if you think Facebook's the be all and end all, and look how rich they are, and if you think about Spotify and YouTube and all of these platforms, and when we talk about everything new is old again, all of the digital guys are racing to figure out how to be human. You already know how to be human. And now digital's as easy as 1, 2, 3 if you talk to Jonathan and get Fabric. Because everything that your audience has learned to do, they can now do directly with you. You don't have to send them via. You don't have to send them via YouTube from your website to see a video. You don't need to send them via WhatsApp to engage with you. You don't need to send them via some other thing. and leak out your engagement to what are not public sort of resources. The Facebooks, the YouTubes, the Spotifys, the whoever you choose to work with are private, predatory, for-profit enterprises that are coming for your audience and your advertisers. So the quicker you throw up the moat around your community and self-serve them yourself, the more resilient you're going to be, because it forces you to grapple with, how do I go digital the way they went digital? So the last message I want to leave is something we often say to our clients. Cloud is a complete game changer. You don't need to invest in the infrastructure that a YouTuber had to do to become YouTube in the early days, because they needed to build servers and data farms and all of that kind of stuff. Now you just rent it on demand. So the access to these resources are far cheaper. If you want to be a Netflix, give you a simple example of the thing I was talking about that local works in the other direction. Does anybody know what the most popular show on Netflix globally is? If there's any guesses.
No.
In lockdown, in lockdown, I happened to binge watch it, and it's Money Heist.
Really?
It's a Spanish series, okay? And if you watch it in the original Spanish with the subtitles, it's even better. But it is a local Spanish television series that went global on Netflix and is now worth, I don't know how many billions they're making out of it, right? But that's engagement.
Yeah.
Hundreds of millions of people around the world have engaged with that content, even though it's not in their native language, not in their native culture, and to be frank, not in the style you would normally watch a heist movie in. It's not Hollywood.
Yeah.
Right. So it's a telenovela smashed up with Die Hard, smashed up with some Tom Cruise type movie. It's all of this diversity, and it works because it's fresh. And as human beings, we can relate to that. Right. So when we think of radio, you can't think of radio as audio only anymore. You got to think of it as community and being able to shape and engage that community conversation, being able to invite in that participation, but most importantly, being that curator of content, opportunity, value in and out of your community. Because as you move it along the partnership chain, the more powerful you become. And the nice thing about digital, it allows radio stations to come together in different markets and exchange content and ideas and test ideas. So the last thing I want to leave you with is digital forces collaboration, because it's so easy to exchange content digitally. One of our innovations in podcasting to make it easy for radio is EchoCast. EchoCast allows you to push a piece of live content that was just broadcast on air out to your website and to your app within 30 seconds of it having been broadcast live. Now that means 31 seconds later, your partner in another geography entirely can receive that content. What does that do for your richness of your broadcast when you're not just trying to do it yourself, but you're standing on the shoulders of giants? Okay. So sorry, that was a bit of a rant, but
no, not at all.
Bring it together on. We really do need to think differently about radio.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for the comments that have come through on the message and chat. Thanks for all the messages that have come through. I see Nash has asked here, Anice, how does a user of the app register demographic details?
That's entirely up to you as the community manager. So in your setup of the Fabric environment, you will set a series of fields that the user would have to fill in on registration. They can be optional, they can be mandatory. It's dynamic, so you're not stuck with what you asked at the very beginning. From there, people in our team like Tyler will be able to derive a whole host of demographic and engagement insights for different segments of your audience based on that. And of course, while you're doing that, you're actually creating an audience database and a segmentation in the real time. So when you ask somebody, For example, what is your primary interest? Music, sport, news, entertainment, or that's quite broad. Where do you live? Which suburb? And I, for example, live in Prestondale. Later on, as a community manager, you now have the digital ability to send a notification to everybody in Prestondale, because you already have structured that data when they registered with you.
And a lot of our clients are using this quite effectively at the moment.
Absolutely. I see, just talking about Money Heist, Tony says Bella Ciao, and that's the thing. Hundreds of millions of people now know this Italian partisan resistance song called Bella Ciao, which has been popularized by the series, right? So, in fact, it forced me to go back and look at the history of that song, and it was actually sung by Italian peasant women who were forced to work in the rice fields as serf labor. So it has an even earlier history of protest.
Interesting.
So these stories can travel virally. We tend to be a bit, what's the word? Intimidated. You know, if you Spanish, you kind of don't have a problem thinking, I'm going to write this thing and it'll go global. But if we Zulu speaking, or if we Xhosa speaking, or you know, particularly in Africa with the Basque Cup that we tend to grow up with, we don't think that, hey, this story is interesting at a human level and can go viral. But we must. Or this content is entertaining and it's funny. You know, who's one of the most popular comedians in America today? It's our Trevor.
Yeah.
You know, so all of this opportunity is there in our local audiences, and our job is to do a better job of elevating them now.
Thanks, Anice. Another, Tony also asked earlier, how does a radio station leverage on creating playlists on platforms like Deezer without migrating audiences? Do you think they can?
I think you can. I think you can blend in those services because it's convenience, right? And that's where we must be very clear. If I'm doing, for example, a summer playlist, then I want to curate that playlist and I want to make it available on Spotify and on Deezer and on Apple Music, and I want to publish it there. And I just want my audience who are using a service of their choice to be able to just tap into that playlist and enjoy the music that I've curated for them. Remember, they don't care about the service. I mean, when I use Apple Music, I'm not thinking about Apple. I'm thinking about the music I'm consuming. So if that has been curated for me and it's something that I find interesting, I'm not going back to Apple. I'm going back to the source of that curation. I want to engage with that editor. I want to say, hey, what about this thing? Have you heard this song? Or I remember growing up that this was the soundtrack of my life. You know, we come from a generation that was analog. So I have music associated with every key event in my life growing up, as I guess many of us of a certain generation do. This new generation doesn't have a soundtrack. They have a social graph or a socialized event timeline that's related to every event in their lives. It's not just the music, it's the photographs, it's the conversation, it's the location. Of course, it's far easier for them to time travel now because you just go back in your timeline.
Yeah.
We just do that in memory. That's a powerful thing as well. But I think, you know, we mustn't be, this is what I mean about collaboration. We mustn't be shy of using other services for the reason they're there. And if we're confident and if we articulate in our own value proposition to our audience, it doesn't matter that they consume the output of my curation from another service. Because the audience is smart enough to know, you guys did that. So for example, I mean, one of our more successful digital-only stations is LM Radio. Right? They live in that curation of a soundtrack of your life type space, right? And if I had to think of coming up with a Summer of '84 playlist, and LM Radio curated that, and I could just pick that up on Spotify or Apple Music. I'm not really thinking about the service that's giving it to me. I'm thinking of the service that's curating it for me. So
Yeah.
I don't think we must. I don't think we must be shy of that.
Okay. I think we've got time for one more here. Is the app capable of integrating into existing content scheduling infrastructure to get metadata about content? I see lots of nodding going on there. So,
yeah, we can. At the moment, that depends a lot on your playout system. So, are you using Genesis? Are you using something else? And we are working on supporting the more popular formats. And obviously, when we mash up your playout metadata with your engagement metadata from our Fabric platform, you're going to be able to start doing things like data analytics and understanding your audience reactions. And in fact, in Fabric, we're also building in event tagging so that you can sort of override and add things in that the systems don't easily sort of allow you to curate, and build up a memory of your broadcast across a number of dimensions.
Meta tagging is definitely available. It's just also about the usage of the person tagging the metadata. So it's up to your own imagination how you want to tag it, I guess.
Okay, fantastic. I think we'll leave it there for now. This is our first seminar with immedia, and we're going to be doing some more. Also, other divisions of our company will also be doing a few, so we'll probably be spammed as you want to take advantage of some of the knowledge that we'll be sharing. Our Geek Managed Services division will also be doing quite a few. We'll be doing a few more, and I see a lot of radio hounds that have been on this particular webinar will probably be getting in touch with, and maybe they'll be invited guests in the future too. Just to say thank you very much to everybody who tuned in, who registered, and as I say, we'll be getting back to a couple of you around some of the questions that you've got. Don't think you've been ignored. We'll certainly be chatting to you in the very near future. So thank you very much for joining us, and have a fantastic day further.
Thank you very much, guys.
Bye. Thank you, guys.
Cheers. Bye.